Welcome back to our ongoing mixing series while we mix a song from beginning all the way to a finished mix. And in this video, we're going to dive deeper into doing some of the heavy lifting, aka processing. And we've been moving forward through all of our tracks, track by track, to get through all of them. And in this video, we're going to dive deeper into looking at guitars. Hey yo, it's Alex from Metamind Music, and as always with this channel, it's my mission to help you, the artist, produce themselves by developing their mindset, expanding their creativity, and connecting to their music in a different way. And with that said, let's go ahead and transition back to the DAW and continue from where we left off. So far, we've gone through bass and we've gone through all the parts of our drums in terms of processing, and now we're going to move on to guitars. And if you haven't checked out the previous videos of this series, I definitely encourage you to check those out before this one. But with that said, let's actually dive in and let's listen to what we got so far. So let's give a taste of how things are sounding with this first verse and then continue to process the guitars. So let's actually look closer at some of our guitars. And for now, I'm just going to turn off our keys, our synths, and our strings, which we will look at in the next videos coming up. But for now, let's zoom in on these guitars and see if we need to do any kind of fixing, processing, what may have you. So we have a guitar that comes in the intro. This is the main motif. Let's give it a listen. So this guitar has a lot of crazy effects to it. What's actually happening is, if I switch over to the other view, this main guitar is being sent to this return track A, which has Valhalla Supermassive on this setting to have some crazy effects. So we're sending this guitar to that crazy effects. And this Valhalla Supermassive is a great effect indeed, and it's free to grab. So if you don't have this one, definitely go grab it because it is an awesome effect. So that's why the guitar sounds so trippy. And I've actually done a lot of processing already on this guitar track, but I'm going to go through it so we can walk through it together. All right, so to start, this is what our guitar sounds like just with the effect. And for now, I'm going to turn it off. So that's our guitar raw, and let's listen to how that sounds like with the mix. So it sounds good, it sounds clear. I would actually maybe turn this down in volume a little bit, so maybe dB or so. But I definitely wanted to take out some low end and a few other resonant frequencies that I found. So let's actually A-B all of these EQ moves. Okay, so the first one is the low end. So this one is just, again, to take out any low end frequencies that are unneeded. You can barely notice it. So we're just removing any low end frequencies that we do not need. Next one is this resonant frequency here. So I'll show you what this sounds like when I boost it. Right, it's kind of like a harsh mid-range, and this is with its 0, but let's tuck it out. So with this frequency tucked out, it actually gives a little bit more room to our drums, the cymbals, the high ends, and the snare when we come back to this part later. Let's go right here. Notice how those mid-range frequencies kind of start masking the drums. Right? If we take some out, we can still hear the guitar clearly. The tone is there, but it just gives more room to our kick and snare pillar, keeping this track moving. Another move I did was taking out some of this 200 hertz range because that's where our bass is living, as well as our kick drum, and even the low end of our snare has a little bit of 200 hertz. So when I cut out this frequency of the guitar, listen to what happens to the kick and snare. Right, let's A-B this whole EQ. So this is with it off. Notice that when we do this, it's subtle, but it gives our bass and our drums more room to breathe, and it kind of tucks the guitar away in the back, because although it's a main motif, I do feel that the bass and the drums are a little bit more significant to the song, and that's kind of a motif that kind of trails around your head, right? There's a lot going on, there's a lot of synths and other things, so I want to make sure to make some room for the bass and drums. Next, we have an EQ where we started boosting some stuff and playing around with tone. So let's A-B what this sounds like. So this is with it off. So what we're doing here is we're boosting a little bit of 8K. I might chill this out a little bit. We're cutting this frequency that I found kind of annoying. I'll boost it for you so you can hear. I'll go back over here. Kind of those low mids, that like 1K, 2K area where it's kind of harsh and it was kind of honky. So I decided to cut some of this out. So this is kind of altering the tone of the guitar, but we're kind of tucking away the mids and we're letting the high mids kind of come through this guitar. And it kind of gives, again, more room for that snare and that bass tone to come through and just gives everything their own spot. So again, let's A-B this. This is with it off. Let's turn it on. Right, it kind of helps the guitar cut through because it gives it a little bit more space, a frequency space to live in. Next, we have this CLA 3A. So I kind of felt like this guitar could use a little bit more glue, a little bit more steady of a dynamics, because right with my playing and when I recorded it, some parts I definitely hit the strings louder and then some other parts a lot more quiet, and I just kind of wanted to even this out. And a 3A compressor is great for guitar, so let's actually A-B what this sounds like. So this is with it off. Let's turn it on. So notice how the pick attack becomes a lot more stable and every note of the guitar kind of evens out. It's kind of a steady volume, as opposed to without the compressor, the dynamics of the guitar kind of goes up and down in volume. And since the energy of the song is quite high, I kind of want the energy of the guitar to be consistent. So that's what this compressor is doing. And then finally, I added some saturation with one of my favorite saturators, which is Decapitator by Sound Toys. And let's A-B this. So this is with it off. turn it on. So what this is doing is actually making it darker. We're adding more harmonics, so it's more of a rich sound. It kind of fills itself out. It's less thin sounding, but we're also making it less bright since there's so many other elements in this mix that are taking up that bright high end, such as the keys, the synths, even the strings. I just wanted to mellow out this guitar a little bit. So that's what this saturator is doing, and it's sounding pretty good. All together here with the bass and drum. All right, let's move to this verse since this is the same guitar tone. Let's turn on the effect. And what we can do is on this effect, we can actually, it has an EQ built in, right? So we can filter out some low end and even some of the high end to make it less extreme. So that's sounding pretty good. So let's move on to a different section of the song where these heavy guitars come in. So let's pop these open and give it a listen. So for now, I'm going to turn off this trippy guitar layer and just listen to these heavy guitars. So these sound great. I like the tone, but what I'm going to do is reach for an EQ 8. And again, I'm just going to pay special attention to the low end because these guitars have a low octave effect on them. So they're playing in the range of the bass. I want to make sure that when these guitars are playing with the bass, that we can still hear the bass, that they're not just taking over completely. So I'm going to go ahead and actually EQ these guitars together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group these two, Command G, and yes, you can make groups in groups, which is super meta, and I love it. I'm going to rename this Rhythms. All right, and then I'm going to pop the EQ onto the group, so I'm processing both sides equally. Okay, so let's actually solo these guitars. So you hear all that low end we're cutting out? I still want the low end tone, but I don't really need the low end frequencies, the low end presence. So let's unsolo these and listen to it with the bass and the drums. So let's A-B this. So this is with it off. With it on. So notice that with the low end cut out of these guitars, it allows the bass to occupy that space and it makes the guitar sound a lot more clear. However, with these guitars, since they're occupying so much low end, they're kind of masking the kick and snare as well. So what I'm going to do is play around with boosting different frequencies in the low end and see where the frequencies are masking each other. So what I did is I cut out some of this 200 since our snare bottom, our kick drum, our bass are all living there. Kind of don't want it to compete with that frequency area, but there's a nice sound around 700 hertz here that I like. What I might actually do for the chorus is I'm going to get into some automation and I'm going to automate the level of our parallel compression up so that we get a little bit more energy in the kick and snare during the chorus. So notice just that the little move, it helped the kick and snare kind of cut through that chorus with these heavy guitars. Sweet, that sounds good. And to wrap up these guitars, let's listen to this final chorus where we have the heavy guitars and the main guitar motif playing at the same time. So what I'm going to do is automate the volume of our main guitar here up during this final chorus since it's playing with those heavy guitars. And once again, we're going to boost up the volume of the parallel compression on the kick and snare to the same volume as this other one, so minus 19 or so. Again, you can right click, edit value, minus 19, boom. Make sure that kick and snare comes through. Hey, if you're just getting started with music production and feeling completely overwhelmed by the whole process, or if you've been at this for a while but you're having trouble finishing projects, or you just want to get a glimpse inside my personal workflow, I've created a super easy to follow 7-step framework that helps you go from your very first ideas all the way to a finished mix and master. And it's super handy to have around the studio as a printout. So if you're interested in grabbing that, you can find it in the description box below. If you got value out of this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you want to stay in tune for the next MetaMind Music transmission of us continuing to mix this song all the way to the finish line, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And with that said, we finished the bass, the drums, and the guitars. Those are starting to sound great. And in the next videos, we're going to continue with the keys, the synths, and the strings, and then finish up our mix after we've finished our processing. So if you're stoked for that, I'll see you in the next video.